to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story. Welcome, and thank you for being here with Deep Sleep Stories. Tonight's gentle tale will drift across a soft hill where sleepy sheep move like little clouds and where the world grows quieter with every breath you take. Settle into a position that feels kind to your body. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw unclench. If your hands have been holding on to the day, let them open now as if releasing a handful of warm sand back into the earth. Breathe in slowly as though you're sipping a calm, cool night air, and breathe out even more slowly as though you're smoothing a blanket across a bed. Again, in and out, letting the exhale be a little longer, a little softer, a little more forgiving. Imagine that with every breath out, the day drains away, leaving you lighter. Thoughts can come and go like distant lanterns drifting across a far-off road. You don't have to follow them. You can simply notice them and let them pass. Now in your mind, you begin to sense a place where time moves gently, a place where the air is clean and sweet, and where a grassy hill rises like a slow wave in a quiet sea. The hill is so soft it seems to glow, even under twilight. The world there is patient, and it is waiting for nothing at all. With one more easy breath, you feel yourself arriving. And as you arrive, the story turns its gaze outward, letting you relax into the background, while the dream continues on its own. The hill was called the Soft Hill, though no one remembered who named it first. Perhaps it had always been called that. Perhaps the name simply rose up from the grass one morning, the way mist rises from a river, and everyone who heard it nodded as if they'd known it all along. Soft Hill was not steep. It did not demand effort. It welcomed feet and hooves and wandering thoughts. Its slopes were rounded like the backs of sleeping animals, and its grass lay thick and springy, bending with a slow resilience. When the wind traveled across it, the blades leaned together in quiet conversation, and when the wind passed on, they returned to stillness as though no time had been lost. On the gentlest side of the hill, where the curve met a sheltered hollow, there was a place sheep liked best. The hollow held warmth, the way a teacup holds tea. It collected the scent of clover and the faint sweetness of wild thyme. In the day, sunlight pooled there, and at night, starlight seemed to settle like pale dust. The sheep came from nearby meadows, from small farms, from the edges of hedgerows, where their lambs had once learned to jump. They came unhurriedly, not because they were told to, but because Soft Hill felt like a soft song humming under their hooves. They were a calm flock, the kind that moved as if they were remembering something beautiful. Their wool was thick and clean, touched by the colors of the world. Some carried the warm hue of honey, some were pale as moonlight. A few had small charcoal markings on their faces, like smudges of night. In the center of the flock, there was a sheep named Bramble. Bramble was not the biggest. Bramble was not the smallest. Bramble was simply Bramble, round and content, with a gentle curiosity in his eyes and an easy patience in his steps. His wool was the color of cream stirred into oatmeal, and when the breeze lifted the outer curls, it looked like ripples on a quiet pond. Bramble loved three things in particular. He loved the feel of grass beneath him when he lay down, the blades bending and springing, tickling his belly in the smallest way. He loved the soft sound of the flock settling, a hush of hooves and breathing that felt like the world taking a long, restful sigh. And most of all, he loved the moment when evening arrived and everything slowed, when the sky softened from blue to lavender to indigo, as if the day were folding itself away with careful hands. This evening began in a gentle way. The sun had slipped low and its light fell sideways across the hill, stretching shadows into long, sleepy shapes. The air was cool but not cold, like water that has rested in shade. Crickets began their quiet tuning at the edges of the grass, and somewhere farther off, an owl tested its voice with a single thoughtful note. The flock wandered in, one by one, then in clusters, then in a slow wave of wool and calm. They grazed without hurry, nibbling the sweetest tufts, pausing often to look up, to blink, to listen to the wind. Lambs, still bright-eyed but mellowed by the hour, hopped a little and then remembered they were tired and pressed close to their mothers. With a small, satisfied sound, Bramble climbed a little higher than most, not because he wanted distance, but because he liked how the hill felt at its crest. The top was broad and smooth. Up there, the wind was slightly clearer, carrying the scent of pine from a distant grove, and the faint mineral smell of stones, warmed by the day. He stood with his legs planted firmly, and he watched the light change. In the western sky, the sun was sinking behind a line of low clouds. The clouds did not look heavy. They looked like feather pillows stacked one above the other, tinted with peach and rose. As the sun dipped lower, the colors deepened, and the edges of the clouds glowed as though lit from within. Bramble blinked slowly. The world seemed to blink with him. Below in the hollow, the flock began to settle. The sound was a soft chorus of gentle sighs, like pages turning in an old book. Hooves pressed into grass. Bodies found comfortable positions. Wool brushed wool. A few sheep gave quiet little murmurs to one another. Not words exactly, but the kind of sound that meant, I'm here, and it's safe. Bramble took a few steps down from the crest and chose a spot where the grass was thickest. There was a small dip in the ground, as if the hill had made a place exactly shaped for a sheep to rest. He folded his legs beneath him and lowered himself into the grass. The hill welcomed him. It gave just enough softening under his weight, and then held him steady and warm. For a while, Bramble watched the sky and listened. The wind moved slowly, and it carried tiny sounds, the rustle of grass, the faint clink of a distant gate, the far-off murmur of a stream. The world did not ask for attention. It simply offered itself, gentle and whole. Above him, the first star appeared, then another, and then a few more, as though someone were softly scattering silver seeds across the darkening field of sky. Bramble's eyelids grew heavy. His breathing deepened, slow and even. Each inhale was cool and fresh. Each exhale warm and soft. He could feel the hill beneath him, steady as a heartbeat. And then, something quietly unusual happened. It wasn't a loud sound or a sudden change. It was more like a shift in the feeling of the air. A subtle hush, as though the night had leaned in closer. Bramble lifted his head. Near the crest of Soft Hill, where he had stood earlier, a faint shimmer hovered above the grass. At first, it looked like the last bit of sunlight caught in the air, but the sun was nearly gone now. The shimmer did not fade. It pulsed gently like a firefly's glow, though larger and steadier. Bramble's ears turned toward it. He felt no fear. The hill felt too peaceful for fear, and the shimmer felt like part of that peace, something that belonged. He rose slowly, grass slipping from his wool, and he walked toward the crest with unhurried steps. The flock below remained settled, their breathing a soft tide. A few heads lifted briefly, then lowered again, trusting the calm. At the top, Bramble stopped. The shimmer hovered just above the grass, forming a small circle of light. It was no brighter than a lantern turned low, and it did not hurt his eyes. In fact, looking at it made his thoughts feel quieter, as though the light itself was smoothing them. Bramble stepped closer. The circle of light expanded slightly, as if making room. The grass beneath it bent, not from weight, but from a gentle pressure, like a hand resting on a blanket. And then the light began to drift, very slowly, down the slope of the hill. Bramble followed. The light did not move in a straight line. It wandered, tracing a lazy path, pausing now and then, as if admiring a patch of clover or a cluster of tiny white flowers. Bramble walked behind it, and with each step he felt his body become heavier in a comforting way, as though sleep were wrapping around him in layers. The light led him toward the hollow where the flock rested, but instead of going straight into the center, it curved around the edge. It skimmed along the border of tall grass and low wildflowers, where moths flitted like small, pale thoughts. As Bramble followed, he noticed something else. The hill seemed even softer here. Not just the grass, but the air, the silence, the very space between sounds. The world felt padded, as though night had laid thick quilts over every sharp corner. The light drifted onward, and Bramble drifted with it, his hooves pressing quietly into the earth. The flock's breathing surrounded him like a lullaby. Somewhere, a lamb made a tiny, sleepy bleat, then fell quiet again. At the far side of the hollow, the light paused near a single old tree. The tree was not tall, but it was broad, with a trunk that twisted gently, as if it had once danced in the wind. Its branches spread wide, and its leaves were small and soft-edged, whispering in the breeze. Beneath it, the ground was especially smooth, covered in a thick carpet of grass and a scattering of fallen leaves that smelled faintly sweet. Bramble stopped beside the tree and looked at the light. The shimmer rose slightly, then widened, becoming a thin veil that hung in the air like a curtain made of moonlit mist. Through it, the world looked the same and yet different, softened, dreamlike, as though seen through the half-closed eyes of sleep. Bramble blinked, slow and calm. From the veil of light, a shape began to form. It was not a creature in the usual sense. It did not have hooves or feathers or fur. It was more like a presence, a gentle figure made of the same pale glow as the veil. It took a shape that was comforting to look at. Round edges, slow movements, a kind of quiet friendliness in the way it seemed to exist. If the night could smile, it might have looked like that. The figure did not speak with words. Instead, it sent a feeling into the air, like a warm breath. Welcome. Bramble felt the message settle in his chest. He did not need to answer. He simply stood, relaxed, and let his ears droop slightly, the way they did when he was content. The figure drifted closer to the tree, and the veil of light followed, wrapping the trunk and the lower branches in a faint glow. Leaves shimmered as if dusted with starlight. Bramble watched, and his thoughts became slower, gentler. It felt like listening to a story without needing to remember any of it, just letting it wash over him. The figure moved around the tree, and wherever it passed, the air seemed to fill with a deeper quiet. Not an empty quiet, but a full one, like a room filled with soft pillows. Then the figure lifted one glowing hand, if it could be called a hand, and touched the air near Bramble's forehead, without quite touching him. A feeling spread through Bramble, warm and soothing, like sun on wool. His eyelids fluttered. His breathing slowed even more. In that moment, Bramble understood, not with words, but with calm certainty, that this gentle presence was part of Soft Hill. Perhaps it was the hill's dream made visible. Perhaps it was the quiet that gathered here every night, taking shape for those who noticed. And perhaps it had come for a simple reason, to help the flock sink into sleep as gently as falling snow. The figure drifted away from Bramble and moved toward the resting sheep. It did not hurry. It flowed. As it passed over the hollow, the light dimmed slightly, becoming softer, more diffuse. It settled around the sheep like mist, not hiding them, but gently outlining them, as if reminding the world how peaceful they were. One sheep shifted, then sighed, and grew still. Another's ears twitched, then relaxed. A lamb nestled deeper into its mother's side, its small body rising and falling with slow breaths. Bramble watched as the entire flock seemed to sink further into comfort. The wind quieted as though listening. The crickets slowed their song, leaving more space between chirps, like pauses in a lullaby. The owl's voice far away softened to silence. Above, the stars gathered. The sky deepened to a rich velvet, and the moon, not yet full, lifted itself over the horizon like a pale boat on a dark sea. The figure drifted back toward Bramble and the tree. Bramble's legs felt sleepy. His body wanted to curl into the grass. But he stayed awake, just enough because he felt that something gentle was still unfolding. The figure hovered near the tree's lower branches, and the leaves began to rustle, even though the wind had calmed. The rustling was not sharp. It was a soft, shushing sound, like someone smoothing a blanket. From the branches, tiny lights began to appear. They were not exactly fireflies, though they glowed. They were not exactly stars, though they shimmered. They were something in between, little dream lights floating lazily downward like soft sparks. They drifted around Bramble, and he watched them with slow fascination. Each dream light carried a tiny feeling, like a note of music. One felt like warm milk. Another felt like clean sheets. Another felt like the memory of sunshine on closed eyelids. They did not demand anything. They simply floated, offering comfort. The dream lights settled into the grass, and where they touched, the blades seemed to grow even softer, bending in slow waves. The hill, already gentle, became gentler still. Bramble lowered himself back down beneath the tree, folding his legs and settling his weight into the earth. His wool fluffed slightly as he exhaled, and the grass pressed up around him like a cushion. The figure hovered a little above him, and the veil of light thinned until it was barely there. Now it was just a faint glow in the air, like moonlight reflected on still water. Bramble's eyes half closed. He could feel the flock breathing below, a steady rhythm. He could feel the hill beneath him, holding him. And then, without warning, Bramble began to dream while still awake. It was a gentle kind of dreaming, the kind that slips in before sleep fully arrives. In his mind, the soft hill became even larger, stretching into a wide, quiet landscape. The grass turned to a sea of softness, and the sheep became small white boats drifting on it. The dream lights became floating lanterns, guiding them gently. Bramble saw himself as a little cloud, and the hill as the sky beneath him. He felt himself drifting light and safe. In that dream space, the figure appeared again. But now it was not a separate presence. It was part of everything, the hush, the softness, the calm. The dream carried Bramble to a place near the top of the hill, where a path of smooth stones curved like a slow ribbon. He followed it, not with hooves, but with the easy movement of thought. Each stone was warm, as though it had been resting in sunlight all day. Each step along the stones made a quiet, satisfying sound, like fingertips brushing velvet. At the end of the stone path, there was a small pond. The pond was perfectly still, reflecting the stars with such clarity that it looked like another sky had been poured into the earth. Around it grew reeds and soft grasses. The air smelled clean, like rain that had not yet fallen. Bramble leaned closer and looked into the pond. Instead of his reflection, he saw gentle scenes, one after another, drifting across the water like slow-moving paintings. He saw the flock as lambs wobbling on new legs, learning the feel of grass. He saw warm barns and open meadows. He saw the soft hands of kind shepherds. He saw long afternoons of grazing and quiet nights of rest. None of it was sad. None of it was sharp. It was all bathed in a warm, peaceful glow. The scenes changed, and now he saw the soft hill itself across seasons. In spring, it was dotted with tiny flowers, and the grass was bright and lively. In summer, it was lush and thick, humming with insects. In autumn, it was gold-edged, the air crisp and clear. In winter, it was covered in soft snow, a white blanket under a pale sky. Through all of it, the hill remained the same in its deepest nature, steady, patient, kind. Bramble felt a deep gratitude, though he did not put it into words. It was just a gentle warmth in his chest, like a small hearth. The pond's surface rippled slightly, and the stars shimmered. Then the dream began to shift again, carrying him away from the pond and back toward the hollow where the flock rested. He drifted down the hill, and as he drifted, he noticed that the air itself seemed to hum with a low, soothing vibration. It felt like a song too soft to hear, but easy to feel. The dream lights floated around him, and each one seemed to slow his thoughts further, smoothing them like pebbles polished by water. Bramble arrived at the hollow and saw the flock sleeping. They were curled and calm, their bodies close enough to share warmth, their breathing synchronized like waves. Some had their legs tucked neatly beneath them. Some lay on their sides, wool spread like soft blankets. Lambs were nestled against their mothers, tiny and still with little ears drooping. The figure moved among them, barely visible now, a hint of glow, a whisper of presence. Wherever it drifted, the sleeping sheep seemed to relax even more, as though sinking into a deeper layer of rest. Bramble felt himself sinking too. The dream did not end suddenly. It slowed. It softened. It became simpler. The hill became just the hill again. The pond became a distant memory. The lights became faint sparkles at the edges of sight. The humming became a quiet, steady silence. Bramble was aware of his body under the tree. He was aware of the grass pressing gently against his wool. He was aware of the cool air moving over his nose as he breathed. His eyelids lowered further. In the sky, the moon climbed higher, its light spreading across a soft hill like milk poured over dark velvet. Shadows became softer. The world looked rounded and kind. A breeze returned, but it was a sleeping breeze, slow and warm. It moved the leaves of the old tree in a quiet rhythm, shushing and whispering, as though the tree were telling the hill a bedtime story. The dream lights, now very few, hovered near the grass and then faded one by one, like candles being gently blown out. Bramble exhaled, long and deep. In his mind, the last active thoughts loosened their grip. They floated upward like dandelion seeds, disappearing into the night. And as the flock slept, Soft Hill seemed to do something too. It settled, not physically, but in a way that felt like a sigh. The hill, the grass, the air, the trees, the distant stream, all of it seemed to relax into itself, as though the entire landscape were drifting into a shared dream. The figure, the gentle presence of the hill's quiet, drifted back toward the crest. Its glow was now barely visible, more felt than seen. It hovered at the highest point like a guardian made of calm. From there, it watched over everything without effort. The night was peaceful. Time moved slowly like honey. Stars wheeled gently overhead, their light traveling an unfathomable distance just to arrive softly on the hill, just to touch the sleeping wool of sheep, the tips of grass, the curve of the old tree's leaves. Bramble's breathing became so slow, it seemed to match the hill's own rhythm. In and out. In and out. The flock dreamed. Perhaps they dreamed of clover fields. Perhaps they dreamed of warm barns. Perhaps they dreamed of floating on clouds. It did not matter. All dreams here were safe. A small lamb stirred, made a quiet sound, and then settled again. A mother sheep adjusted slightly, tucking her lamb closer. Another sheep twitched an ear, as if hearing something far away, then relaxed. Everything was cared for by the softness of the world. Bramble's head rested against the grass. His ear lay against the earth, and if he listened, though he was nearly asleep, he could almost hear the hill's heartbeat, a slow, steady pulse, like the deepest kind of comfort. The wind whispered over him, and the whisper sounded like this: rest, rest, rest. The old tree's leaves murmured the same. Rest, rest, rest. The stream far away offered its own gentle agreement, a hush of water over stone. Rest, rest, rest. And somewhere at the crest, the quiet presence of Soft Hill glowed softly, as though smiling. Now the story begins to drift toward stillness, like a boat easing into a quiet harbor. The sky remains dark and kind. The stars remain steady. The moonlight rests on the hill like a pale blanket. The flock sleeps. Bramble sleeps. The hill holds them all. Breathing is slow here. Air moves in, cool and clean. Air moves out, warm and soft. Nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to be solved. The world is complete in its quiet. Soft Hill continues to be soft. The grass continues to be gentle. The night continues to cradle everything. And as the calm deepens, it becomes simpler. A slow breath, a soft exhale, a quiet pause. The feeling of being safely held. The sense of drifting down, down, down into a place where thoughts are faint and far away like lights on a distant shore. Everything is peaceful, everything is slow, everything is ready for sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.